Welcome to our conference on student activism for education for sustainability. We're very, very excited about this. It's a combination of Danish Students' Union.
Yes, the Danish Student Union. And then we're part of a partnership or where we are working with education for sustainability, sustainable development, which is called UPO.
Yeah,
and then you're here.
So this is Amelia, and
Yes,
I'm
hi.
Sue with the Centre for Higher Education Futures. So hopefully people online can hear us and see us. Emma, can you put thumbs up or down or something? Oh, good. Good.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yes, we know there's been some technical troubles with some Zoom links. I think everybody got the right link now. I can see people joining slowly, so that's nice. So there's a lot of people online and not only us here in the room. So very, very nice.
Good. So, Amelia, you start off explaining what this Ubu thing is.
Yes. So all of this, and the reason why we're here is actually because we long time ago had a student movement that was fighting for sustainability in our education and how could we develop that. And from that, we made a big campaign that ended up in what we can call UBO. As I said, there's Education for Sustainable Development, which consists of 80 organizations of the whole sector of education in Denmark. So that's down to middle school, elementary school, and all the way up to higher education as well. And they have 8 different partnerships, and one of them is for higher education. And that's
you chair that.
Yes, I chair that together with Christine, who's down there.
Yeah. And then there's lots of other organizations involved in it, including the Centre for Higher Education Futures.
Yes.
So we've joined forces to hold this event, which is very nice, and it's funded by UBU, and Sina is the UBU boss. So
that's very nice.
Yeah. So that's who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And then today, the aim of today, as you mentioned, this all started off as student activism, in fact,
yes,
at Aarhus University, and then spread.
And we have a tradition here in Denmark where we do a lot of student activism. So that's an important issue for us to talk about.
Yeah. But then the effort went into getting the government to approve a big report that UBU wrote and stuff. Where's the activism? So the aim today is to revive ideas coming from students about how they want to change their education. And so the aim of today is to collect up ideas for the future, and also people who would like to be involved in these ideas for the future. So we want an action plan as a result of today. But this is just the first of a series of seminars or webinars, because the second one, we're going to invite all the academics in Denmark who work on sustainable education. And Amelia, wherever Amelia is, has been, Elena, sorry. I get Amelia and Elena mixed up. Elena, she's done some good work in beginning to plot who's doing what in the universities. And we're going to ask them about their initiatives and their ideas and get an action plan from them. So we have 2 action plans, one from the students, one from the academics. And then the third one is we're going to invite the leaders of the pro-deans for education and the leaders of the study boards, because I think there's a big challenge about how within the very constrained systems of education in Denmark, you begin to incorporate these ideas. So that's the overall plan. And what we might actually do is add another little thing in here, which is if today we end up with a really nice action plan from the students' point of view, we might be able to invite some of the students back again, especially the Humboldt students I've been talking to, Simon, because they run a workshop for me each year on how to make things happen, how to be activists, how to change the university, how to change the world. So we might invite everybody back with my students on my course and do an event together. So that's a question mark, dot, possibility. Yeah.
Yes. But we're here today to learn and to do the action plan and figure out how can we take a step further.
Yeah. So we have a program.
Yes.
Where you and I are meant to be finished now.
We are in the
Which we are, yeah. And then we have Jebbe and Jonas, who are going to give us a talk. And that's going to be introduced by Greet. And then we have a little break. And then we have some fantastic students from Humboldt and from Uppsala. So that's Paula and I've forgotten your name again. Oscar, of course.
And for you online, you will be able to see them when they come up
when
here
they come up here,
do the presentation as well.
And they're going to tell us about the work they're already doing and been doing for a number of years as students leading and initiating education programs. Then we're going to break into small groups online and in the room and just share ideas and come up with initiatives and ideas, and we'll have feedback from those. And then you and I come back and we kind of say thank you to everybody at the end.
Yes.
But at the end, we've also got some secret refreshments if you want to continue talking.
Yeah.
So there's tea and coffee up there that you're welcome to stand up at any time that you get thirsty or hungry and just walk up there. It all needs to be eaten and drunk. Then we've got people making photographs. So our official photographer is Lisa. And we've had other people standing up taking photographs as to question, does anyone not want to be in photographs? Because we'll make sure we don't include you if anyone doesn't want to be in photographs.
Then they can come privately to you.
In the break, yes.
No, we'll make sure they don't get into a photograph to start with.
You can just give me a sign.
Yeah. Just come like point.
And the other thing is that there is a chat function here. So I think if you've got computers open here, or especially online, if you want to ask any questions or make any comments, there's a chat function. And Jacqueline here from UBU, is it, or DSF? DSF from the Students' Union is going to be monitoring the chat and sticking her hand up and interrupting when there's something coming through from the chat. And the chairs hopefully will also kind of invite you to summarize what's in the chat.
So very important for you online. Just if you have any questions, write them down in the chat, and then we will make sure that we actually address them here in the room.
And the final bit of housekeeping is at 5 o'clock, the University of the Third Age has their university here. And they tend to be quite bolshy and come in and want to take over the place. And apparently they start coming about 4:30. So we need to be finished at 4:45 and then put all the desks back and get out of here by 5 o'clock so that the Third Age can come in. But we'll monitor the door and stop them coming in before then. So,
yes.
I think that's us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Either.
And only a little bit.
No, we're perfect. Yeah. So over to Greet and Christine.
Okay, this is going to be very brief because you only have half an hour, and I know you have many PowerPoints, Jonas. So no, I just I'm gonna be quite a strict timekeeper, and I guess that's why Sue also asked me to do it. She knows I am. Jebbe Læsø, Professor Emeritus here from DPU, and I would like to say one of the pioneers within this field. You've done a huge job in putting sustainability, education for sustainability on the agenda, both at DPU and on a national scale and internationally. So it's a huge privilege to have you here with us today. And Jonas Lysgaard, Associate Professor here at DPU now, you're carrying the weight of your forefathers on your shoulders. No, you are also making a huge contribution now, trying to build this area or field and make it grow as it should grow these days. So yeah, welcome to both of you. I think you have to stand up here when you talk, and afterwards, if you have any questions, we need to do something with the microphone. Either you come up here or I ask the question again so the audience online can hear you, but we'll take that afterwards. I don't know how you want to
Yes.
do this, so.
Thank you, Grit. Thank you all, students, colleagues, and friends. I do research in environmental and sustainability, education, and pedagogy. And I just wanted to use this opportunity to try and frame some of the issues that I think are in many ways key, but also open up, of course, for our own critical perspectives of what the university can be. And then Jeppe will come also with some excellent examples. So when talking with youth, I mean, it's wonderful finally having a focus on the students. Actually, there's so much focus on faculty, so much focus on universities and how we run them, that the voice of the students are not always super present. But when we talk about or talk with students about the challenges that we are facing, I mean, here I take from the latest part report from IPCC on what to do, how can we act in relationship to climate change, which is of course one of the key aspects of sustainable development. I mean, we can do something. We need to do something now. Climate change is here. It's very much not something in the future. We do have lots of tools in many ways. Half the globe is already exposed to these challenges. We are on a route to 3 degrees, which is pretty wild. When I started in 2009, it was 2.5 degrees. That was like the horror scenario. So it's developing fast. It's far cheapest to mitigate. I mean, already work with these challenges. The price will be very heavy if we wait and try to pay the bill afterwards. And then what I see as the educational and pedagogical opening, that all action helps. It's not only on a structural macro level that we can do something. There's always something to do for all of us. And then, of course, I mean, the rhetoric trick here is the burning platform. It'll get pretty dark, and then it'll get easier to talk about later. But there's more. I mean, biodiversity crisis, and all kinds of pollution and pandemics, and in Denmark we have very little protected nature. Actually, second smallest amount in the whole globe. So there's lots of issues, but it's important to remember that the climate change aspect of sustainability is key and something we always focus on. But of course, there's more. I mean, so when we talk about the economy, a key aspect of sustainable development, of course, I mean, it's interesting to see that the generation contract between that our children will be wealthier than we are. It doesn't really hold up anymore. So modernity doesn't deliver this post Second World War continuous growth. It has changed for some and for a lot. I mean, and there's many good reasons for that. The financial crisis come more and more often. Debt is growing across the board, states and individuals alike. Cost of living, inflation is something we see, and the housing market is out of control in many areas. But there's more, of course, to sustainability. I mean, the social sphere. When we ask young people in Denmark about what's the good life, and we do not even just have to ask researchers. We can also look at current literature and how youth write and think about the current challenges. I mean, there are many cultures of performance and perfection, which I think many students will recognize also from their practice at universities. Crisis of relations, both in real life and online. How deep are our relations? Do we have enough of them? How do we navigate that? anxiety of life choices. I see that a lot from my students, when bachelor students come in the door and they're quite anxious about, their future professional life 5 or 6 years later. Will they ever get a job? And then, of course, questions of power and discrimination, how do young people even have a voice today? How can they change society into a more sustainable society? And of course, relating to gender, and lots of other issues that constantly pop up and develop. So just trying to frame sustainability questions as, of course, these, massive planetary challenges, but also something that are really close to all of us, I think, and students, especially in many ways. So when we talk about sustainable development, of course, there's the classic 3 spheres, and the hope that in the middle of these, the social, environmental, economic spheres, in the middle, we'll have sustainable development, which is, of course, an ideal and very hard to reach. But there's also, it's worth discussing, and it's something that Jeppe has worked a lot on. We could also argue that it's very hard to develop an economy without a societal basis and educational background for doing so. It could be very hard to do both an economy and a society without a place to live, without food to live off. So in that sense, I mean, sustainable development is hugely complex, but something that has a tendency to also, involve young people to a growing degree. It's about your future. But it's also something that is constantly debated, changed, and also, in many regards, often tries to be relocated as a technical question. And we always insist that it's also an educational question. So when you look at universities and universities in Denmark, there's a pressure, especially from students, lecturers, and also to a growing degree from the work market, but that universities in Denmark arguably has not been super fast or very progressive in moving on these challenges. And just some Danish perspectives on this, lots of protests, lots of focus, and it's growing. I mean, you talk about for a long time ago, we had a focus on this and something changed, but I mean, arguably for the last 40 years, there's been a lack of a student voice relating to sustainability and climate change, and now it's here, so it's very positive. So just before, also handing over to Jeppe, I think it's worth to mention that all Danish universities do have a strategic emphasis on sustainability. All Danish universities does want to work with this, but are struggling to find good ways, especially, in a more substantial way relating to education. Lots of focus on, running the campus or transport or all the low-hanging fruits, but the key focus of education and research is still very hard for the Danish universities to think about when relating to sustainability. So I'll just end up with this classic way of differentiating sustainability in education. So one thing is the disciplinary take, that where we focus on, in education science, in health, in law and so on, how do we understand and work with sustainability? And that's fine. And we should do that. We should have knowledge, specific disciplinary knowledge. But in many ways, we also need to go across the different disciplines. That's hard. We always want to talk about interdisciplinary challenges and so on, and how we deal with those, but they are really hard to work with. But perhaps it's not even enough. The modern university was shaped by capitalist logics, by the market, by supplying about not only a interdisciplinary, but also a transdisciplinary approach where we can go beyond. So universities are not only universities for sustainable development that try to push knowledge about sustainable development, but whereas universities could be seen as sustainable development, as learning centers, as places where we challenge how we live and how we want to navigate the present, but in many ways also the future. So those are some of the questions that have changed or shaped and influenced the work of Yep, and I must say I'm extremely optimistic with this new emphasis on the student and the student voice. And you are in many ways the most important actors in the universities, but often those that we listen to the least and the latest. So I'm very happy about that. Jeppe?
I take over here and paraphrasing Obama, I would say not yes we can, but yes you can. So you who are here as students, because what I would try to do is to just use my 10 minutes to provide you with a list of different types of student activism and give you some examples that it actually can move things. So now to my last slide, and it starts like this. And you can see I have like two different types of action: educational policy action, change your institution, change your study and courses, and empower your co-students. And I will try just briefly as kind of appetizers to mention some examples, for otherwise it would take really long time. But, you know, very often activism is interpreted as demonstration and other kind of civil actions in the public sphere. And indeed, that is protesting and in doing so can be very effectful. It can also be just a lot of work and then no effect, I would say. It's a sensitive thing to work with protest. But we have very good examples from before the parliamentarian election in 2019, where we had the huge student and pupil demonstration in Denmark, also in many other countries at that time. But they actually influenced quite a lot the election. It was called, it became a climate election. And I think that the students' part of that was crucial because it was the first time the student gave voice, and they did it together. They were really many, and they talked. You can say they put pressure on the bad conscience of the elder generations. So I think that is something that student can use also in the future, but. It is not always good to make demonstration. Later on, there have been several demonstrations with no people almost and a lot of work in doing them. So that's something we also may discuss. When is it good to make a demonstration? Then I have this which I call making noise in the media. It means to write and interact with journalists in order to bring cases up that show that here are some problems and so on. And now I'm so old, so I can talk about this as something I have experienced myself, but in the end of the 60s, beginning of the 90s, the new environmental movement was rising in Denmark. We had the kind of nature conservation organization and so on, but they did not anything about the deterioration of the environment, pollution and so on. And then it was actually students who did it. It was at Copenhagen University, and they used different ways to do it. And what I would point out here is that they used what I have called reason provocation. They really had strong arguments and have been careful to say being sober in the way they interacted with the public through the media. But also with the political parties. But they combined it with very provocative ways of doing it. So if you are too provocative, you are excluded from the debate by the counterpart can say you are not really serious and this is just ridiculous. But on the other hand, if you are just very polite and bring up the argument, you can be included and incorporated into their discussion. So you need, that is actually a Norwegian sociologist, Thomas Mathisen, have written very nicely about that you have to do both. Okay, next one is lobbying. I would say a few years ago, I would not mention that as part of student activism, but we have a very good example from the law for teacher education that was changed. So sustainability became a part of it. And it was basically a part of that. There was established organization with Teacher for Futures that at the University College in Copenhagen acted, and especially it was one guy. He was extremely active in talking with the rector of the university, talking with some, he had some contacts into political parties, talking with experts and so on. And he convinced the rector to change his ideas of what educational development should be about. So, but also we had in the beginning, I was part of it, try to convince the political parties to change the law, but it didn't succeed, but it succeeded after this lobbying work. I would say that was really an important part of it. So knowing the right person's decision maker and interacting with them, that's not always bad. Even now Emilia talked about this national development with 80 organizations and so on. It has not happened if we didn't have people that was lobbying. So don't underestimate the importance of that. Then I would mention build alliances. We had an anti-nuclear power organization in Denmark that did an extremely well job in the 1970s and actually changed the whole opinion about atomic power. And after 10 years, they concluded that their victory was partly based on that they put more emphasis on building alliance than fighting enemies. Not that they also did that, and you should do both, but it is extremely important to know who can you be allied with. And for that, I would mention that our national partnership have also shown powerful in that we can bring so many different parts together and support each other's work. Now I go to this next one with change your institution. Yeah, there's a lot of examples on greening campus. There's a lot of international network on higher education and sustainability where you can find examples. But many of them are very small examples on technical optimization and so on. If you like to know, I have a very nice example from the United States where some students established a local food production and collaborated with supermarkets and also changed the canteen and so on in their area and even grow things themselves and so on. Top-down supported bottom-up organization. I think organization is crucial, and if you do not have a well-working organization, it's difficult. I was once at the university in Ghent, where they had an acceptance from the top and also even some economic support for a sustainability secretary. And then they had a lot of working group where students, technical staff, and VIP, scientific workers were collaborating in work groups, and they changed the transport policy in the city so it fit better with the university. They built up an alternative bike system, and they changed the economic policy of the university. So they had, and they even had courses in how to make social change. So they use this in their working groups. I think that was a very nice combination of courses and then action groups that work with concrete changes. Yeah, and then I come to another interesting thing is that you even in the university with the structures there are, you can work to open spaces for doing something that makes sense, where you can use your study time as part of your action. And here I would mention science shops. Perhaps some of you know about it. In Denmark, we had several science shops. I was employed when they first started at the Technical University in the mid of the 80s, where ordinary people could come and ask the teachers and the students to make project about something that was of general interest. And there was done a lot of things, but of course, there are also always some opponents against such innovative initiatives, and several years after, they closed it down for economic reasons, they say. In Ghent, where I was, but also in Brussels, they have worked with what they call urban academies. That is a kind of intermediating platform between the university and the city, where you can say that the students come and make real-world projects together with the city, with the urban planners there. So that's also a way. And these things also at Ghent University, there was interdisciplinary courses. We have had the same here in Copenhagen with the collaboration with the different universities here. I think there are still some about, I don't know what, but not, I remember there was interdisciplinary courses on environmental issues where students from different departments could work together on projects, and in that way also learn to work interdisciplinary. Now I say student-led courses, I let it over to Uppsala Semus to talk about that. And then the last thing, empower co-student. I have been slightly in touch with the Green Youth movement here in Denmark, coming up after the big demonstration. And I think they do something very well that I have seen for the environmental movement during the decades, that when you organize something, there should be space for those grassroots, not only for the elite activists. Sometimes action groups become very elitarian, where only the most enthusiastic are involved. But it's very important to have structures that also appeal to those who are not ready to be that involved. And one thing I've noticed with the Green Youth movement was that one of their rules was making good parties. And I think that's very much in line with what I have seen early on with environmental groups. They do not work if the social part of it doesn't work. So you have to take care, and it's too hard only to cope with problems. Of course, working with environmental problems can be very motivating, give meaning to what you are doing, but you cannot do it only for that reason. You also need to enjoy the life together about being activist. Okay, that was my point.
Yeah, 6 minutes. There's some chat questions. Is anyone looking into that?
no questions in the chat.
Huh?
There's no questions.
There's no questions. Okay, so please, if anyone online or here in the room have questions, it's now the time to raise them to Jonas and Jeppe. And you will look at the chat if there's anything here. Did it resonate with anything you have been doing yourself? You're nodding.
No, it's just like when you presented, especially here in the end, I was like, yes, protest. We need to talk about when does it work doing protests, or when will we not be able to mobilize enough people? And then it just get into like being a bit annoying that we keep doing protests. Like, not that it shouldn't be annoying for the politicians, but but it's more annoying than it's like impactful. I could just really resonate about that, because it's a talk we a lot of times have. How can we make gimmicks? How can we like be visible for the politicians, but not being too annoying that they don't want to listen to us? And I don't know if I should repeat it there with the people online.
Could you, one of you online, can you write in the chat if you can hear when there's a question from or comment from the audience?
It
Just
was
so we know.
very clear to hear it.
You could or could not?
It wasn't very clear.
Okay, so the comment was from the Danish Student Union here, how to actually reach a good balance between being provocative and not being too so annoying that the politicians and other people do not want to engage with you. And I don't know if you have any comments or suggestions on that, or anyone else perhaps have examples or experiences from their work that they want to share. Yeah. Yeah.
Up there, so you
Yeah.
can see,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it is a part doing both and being sensitive. When do you have the support for doing something that is provocative? For example, the anti-nuclear power movement said that they didn't use demonstration before they were almost sure that they would win the case. So very in specific cases. So they had the kind of impression, where do they have opinion behind them to support, and that there will be enough people and so on. And they actually did some very important demonstration at Barsebäck, Sweden, and so on, together with the Swedes actually. But yeah, I think that building alliance and being lobbying, that is also having dialogue. So you get accepted as a serious voice. And then you can, as not to be too much incorporated into their things, do something that actually question the more basic thing, or using a non-parliamentarian form of action and so on. I think that is doing both, but being very aware that you are also recognized as serious people.
Yeah. Okay, maybe you can, would it be okay if you just ask it so they can see? Are you sitting so close?
That's perfectly fine. Hi, I'm Rune. I'm a student of philosophy of education here at DPU. I feel like the word activism has a bit of a hard time currently. With regards to what was just said, both from Jeppe and from Jonas, like activism seems to be something that is just working for difference, working for transformation, something other than what is right now, right? But when I hear the word activism, only very recently I changed my perception from being something that is basically purely demonstrations or, making noise in the media. And probably that is sort of reigning with my peers as well, I would expect. When it comes down to this like sort of activism towards education or just basically sustainable development, I think there is a necessity of sort of changing the tone of this green activism to something other than setting ablaze factories that produce a bunch of coal or whatever, right? So that you're actually doing activism when you're sort of just changing your habits and then internalizing that thing so that you might be a part of the wider union, right? I don't know if you have any comments on that, but that just seems to be the situation for me, and at least for me, realizing that was sort of quite big. That's it.
Yeah. No, I think you're right in the sense that, it can be very hard if the perception of the activist student is only the one who is participating in demonstrations all day long, all week long, which I think is unfair in many ways. I mean, in Denmark, we have a long tradition for being very good at civil society organizations, and everybody's involved to a certain degree in something in Denmark. And now suddenly this is a legit way of also being, a young person who wants to see a better world, and not only, delegating this for politicians and so on and so forth. So I think you could talk about individual activism where you try to change your life and the spheres that you're part in. You could talk about, you go together with groups of friends, more or less informal activism. And then, of course, there's now finally organized voice that you can take part in. But I agree with you also what I'm hearing, that it's also too much, and what you said, it's also over the top. And sustainability, it's often too much of an ideal. And the challenges that we face are often too much to actually, take on, directly. So in that way, I think Jebbe's appeal to also, respect the social side of things, and insisting that we can act to a certain degree as individuals, but basically these are challenges that we need to face on a bigger level. So yeah, more broad, more inclusive notion of activism, I think would be very strong, and being activism in your study is also part of being an activist, and not only on the streets, of course.
You want to ask a question as well? Yeah. Would I ask you to come up here, or is it?
Yeah, but it's very brief. It's just I sense that you needed a question, so I just thought
We are over time now, so but no.
yeah, but yeah, I just thought it was very interesting when Jeppe said education as sustainability. So I just wanted the extra time to ask you to elaborate a bit.
So there's a question here about the notion of education as sustainability, not for sustainability, and whether Jeppe could, or Jonas perhaps. Yeah.
I mixed the names.
Yes, Jonas, if you could just briefly elaborate on it and reiterate perhaps what you said. And then I think we have to close. Yeah, then we're down on time, and yeah. So good, briefly.
Yes. No, it's a key way of looking at education. I mean, I think many of us, also those of us involved in education and being students, and think about education as moving knowledge from those who have knowledge to those who have not, and then moving on in the world. But a key argument of the field we are part of is that that's fine. That's good, but it might not be all of it. Perhaps we should also think about the knowledge that we get now as a way of navigating the present. But education is not only about the present. It's very much also about the future, the lives you will live after university. And in that sense, knowledge about the present is not enough, because you'll meet challenges that we cannot foresee, that we do not have insight into. I do not as a lecturer have insight into your way of living and what's important for you. So in that sense, seeing education not only as a vehicle for transporting knowledge into people, but also as a way of continuously throughout your life being critical of how we can understand our lives, how we can navigate it, what kind of means, what kind of solutions are we interested in. That for us would be a classic educational critical Bildung, dannelses infused way of thinking about education. And of course, we often miss that with universities. That universities are not only producers and, movers of knowledge, but also a place very much where you can think differently about the different societies, about the futures that we want to inhabit. That's not only a poor reflection of today with a bit less income, a bit, less fun and flying around, but perhaps it could be substantially different. And in that way, it's universities as sustainable development, I think, is a key way of thinking about education, also higher education.
Okay, yeah, I think that's it for this slide.
Thank you, you two, and Greet for steering that through. Would you like to come up and sit up here for the next session? We're going to actually hear from some students who have been activists over many years. Yes, come and sit up here. And then you're all close to the mic when we get moving.
Still having a break now?
Are we having a break now? Would you like a break now? Yes. Okay, 10 minutes to stand up and shake around and fine, yes, more coffee and then come back. Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. I forgot about the break. 5 minutes. Yes. Sorry about that. I forgot.
Yeah.
Ja.
Is it okay, Emma? Can you follow it okay?
Yes, it's good. We can hear things clearly, so that's good. Sue, you're muted. You are on mute.
Can you hear me again now? Emma, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so let's reassemble. And the next session is actually some examples of work that students have been doing over a number of years, getting their universities to let them to run student-led courses. So I find this so exciting. It's a real honor to have people from Humboldt, and there were meant to be 2 of them, but Vera got this horrible flu that's going around. So she sent her apologies. Simon has to do it all by himself. And then Paula and Oscar from Uppsala University. So over to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, also welcome and thanks for having us from my side. Thank you so much, Sue, for the invitation. And thank you also to the DSF people for having us today and having lunch with us. It was a pleasure. I will be talking about some student-initiated teaching and some student activism now, giving you some examples under the sort of the umbrella, the lead of how to encourage student-led engagement for sustainable development at universities. And as a small intro, I would like to take a minute that just you talk with your partners or the people sitting next to you. For the online people, I think you have to do this by yourselves. What examples of student activism do you know from your university life, from your faculties, from your, I don't know, what you've seen in the street? Just have a quick chat and then we come back here in a minute.
Fordi at vi har kun også er et sted 2 år, så når man ikke opleve, at det kan være ens eget sted, man kan komme børn på vej ud. Og det er i virkeligheden det der ejerskab, og dermed så information bare
Some very engaged discussions already going on. Super cool.
We get it going. It's difficult.
Back here now, please. Yeah. Seems like you know a lot of examples. Maybe you can remember some of them for the discussions we're going to have later on in today. Now I want to start since I'm here as sort of a representative from the sustainability office at the Humboldt University in Berlin. I wanted to, of course, introduce this sustainability office to you. It sounds very official, but we aren't really that official, as we are a student initiative, which it's not a representative in any official way. But we're doing quite a lot of stuff. We were founded in 2014 by a group of students from different study fields, and it has been going on ever since then. We do project-based working groups, so we always think of, we think of it as an open space to think and execute projects from students for students, and within sort of 5 areas of action, which is communication, teaching, research, governance, and sort of the daily business of university. Currently, we're 10 to 15 people, but this changes by season and by year. We've been down to 3 to 5 that only kept it going. Now we were able to recruit some more people. So it's always been a bit of an up and down. And we assemble every Monday. So we have a plenary session then, and essentially you can be part of it. Every student can be part of it, and there's nothing formal about it. If you join the plenary, you're part of it. Everyone has the same rights, the same voting rights. So it's very base democratic, non-hierarchical space. Just to introduce you to some things that have been happening in this creative space and in these different working groups. So for example, there's been a podcast, there's an initiative to introduce the planetary health diet to the cantinas, first at Humboldt University, now actually Germany-wide. So there's a lot of networking going on. There has been some approaches to have like an urban gardening around the uni. We've been co-authors of the climate protection concept of the university, which we have now, but it's actually not very well implemented. So now we have to fight for the implementation of the same concept. And lots of other stuff that's been going on. And a big part, of course, is also networking between students, between different initiatives. But it's also about community and about fun, as we've heard today. That's a very important aspect. Some recent projects also include, we can tell you here. Some recent projects also include, or we've often been to protests together. We've also heard about that before, or recently connected with other sustainable initiatives in Berlin and hosted a big party at a club in Berlin together as a solidarity funding party for green initiatives and to promote local artists there. And all of this is happening with sort of the idea of, hey, we want a sustainable transformation at university, because we as students, that is the space where we can act, where we have agency, where we have leverage, but also always thinking, okay, if we can induce change in university, and maybe through that we can induce a change in society. So we always want to have that societal perspective in there, but we want to, or we see it as a second step, kind of, if that makes sense to you. Now, as a specific example, what role can students themselves actually play within universities to promote sustainable development? And I think maybe this is a big question here also in the talk, or in the event we're having today. I want to give you one good practice example that we've been doing at Humboldt University, which is the Studium Ökologicum. It's a module combination, so it consists of 2 parts, StudEg 1 and StudEg 2, for a total of 10 ECTS within the elective outside of the standard curriculum. Now, some explanation for that are not part of the German university systems. In most bachelor's and master's degrees in Germany, you have a certain amount of credits that you have to take outside of your field of study. So, and this is usually where students can come to our Studium Ökologicum, because we are in transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary teaching. So usually students can apply it there to their transcripts. And this is very important, because then that opens it up for most students, so they can take something out of it, but they have sort of the space in their curriculum to use it, or to visit the Studium Ökologicum. Now we give them, upon completion, if you complete the StudEg 1 and 2, students receive a nice certificate, which looks nice and which they can attach to their CVs or something, just to have this a bit more prominent and to make it a bit more knowledgeable, as if it's just in the transcript of records of their bachelor's or master's degrees. That's at least the idea. And for you to get in, and then let me quickly talk about the 2 parts. First of all is a ring lecture, which is what most students actually visit, which has an interdisciplinary approach. I will present it in a bit more detail later on. And it's around 120 students each semester. So maybe between 80 and 150. It actually varies quite a bit. And it's the approach is it's a peer-to-peer teaching. So we will come to that later, but this lecture is organized by students for students. And then the second part of it, the other 5 ECTS are a seminar that has to be somewhere in the space of sustainability. Every semester there's a list published of seminars from the university course catalog that you can take. And I will talk about one of them in particular later on. So let's have a look at the lecture. It's called Der grüne Faden, the green thread. And here you can see some of the posters for it, or some of the posters for it that have been in recent years. And generally it's open for everyone. It's every Thursday, and it changes every semester. Because it's always a new group of students organizing the lecture, it's going to be different every semester. And this is actually by design, because we don't want to repeat it, but we want it to be up to date and to also reflect the students' interests, actually. And just to give you an idea, this is the program for the current semester of the Ring Lecture. Unfortunately, it's in German, but there are some I can give you, I can't go over and point, right? But for example, can you see the curve? Oh yeah, perfect. So for example, here, the sustainability office introduces themselves. Here, some of the titles are in English, actually. So you can see it's quite a diverse approach, and they try to sort of match it to some of the SDGs, the Sustainability Development Goals, and it can really be anything. And the cool thing is that we can also incorporate speakers or people that are not classically part of academia, such as journalists, NGOs, etc. So we've had a cooperation with an NGO called Fashion Revolution, for example, that talked about sustainability in fashion and combined it with an upcycling workshop that you could actually do in the lecture. We've had people from the Freitag magazine. They did a big piece on the global oceans and presented some of their work. And so the idea is to create a more integrated perspective on it and to maybe leave the classical academic approach a bit behind, or to be open to more. However, there are also some things that always happen, which is an introductory lecture by our patron, Professor Dr. Dagmar Hase, and an introduction of the Sustainability Office, which is us, unfortunately just me today. There's often room for excursions, so there are a lot of interesting NGOs and initiatives in and around Berlin. So usually there's 1 or 2 excursions per semester, for example, to an urban gardening, or there's a global nutrition lab that can be visited. We also cooperate with the IRI thesis, which is an integrated research institute on human environment systems, which is closely connected to Humboldt University. And they usually always give a lecture, and they also have an award for a thesis that was like the best thesis connected to sustainability, which is also then awarded in the Ring Lecture. And the exam is also a bit off, as it is a conference-style poster presentations. So the students prepare presentations in groups and then present them to one another in sort of a conference-style approach. So we try to make it a bit more engaging if possible. Now let's talk a bit on how this Ring Lecture is actually created. And it is created in the project seminar Studieren Transformieren, which is transform studying. And it's a student-led seminar that takes place every semester. And in that semester, there are different projects I presented to the students, and they can choose to execute one of these projects which is revolving around sustainability. One of these projects is always plan the Ring Lecture for the next semester. And students actually do that in 6 weeks. So it's quite impressive that actually works. So they have to find the speaker, they have to plan it, they get some help, but in general, that's how we introduced these peer-to-peer, this peer-to-peer approach. There are also some other projects that try to connect the students with other parts of the university, such as, for example, the staff, the professors. So these other units of the university can propose projects, which then try to find student groups that take them on in those in this project seminar. So, for example, a student group once get like a guidance through an exhibition around sustainability that was developed by the Humboldt University, just as an example. I can give you some more examples later, but I think looking at the time, yeah, we go quicker. Now, how did we get there? Well, it was a long, it was a long way. And it first started in the sort of the 2010s that sustainable teaching became a topic at all. And for a long time, this has been completely voluntary. So the first Ring lecture was actually born in the summer term of 2015. And then for several years, it was organized completely voluntarily by people that were in the sustainability office. Only then, and then at some point, it was a completely voluntary project. And then at some point, it got more and more institutionalized, and that's what we're still working on. So you could get, at some point, you could get, in 2016, you could get 3 CTS for the lecture. Then we got a first student assistant position, whose task was to integrate it more into the university. Then 2018, the current format was developed with the lecture and the seminar together. And then in 2019, we finally got a second student assistant, which helps with the planning, especially the organizational aspects, like, I don't know, requesting speakers, getting funding, stuff like that. And then since 2022, it's this student seminar that plans the lecture to make it even more sort of student-to-student engagement. There's a bit, well, lots of things happen. It's not a straight line. You need endurance, a lot of it. And currently, we are working with the 2 student assistants that each have 60 hours a month, which is not a lot if you want to plan something like this. And they have a budget of 5,000 euros a year for fees and travel reimbursements and everything. So we rely on speakers to be pretty efficient if possible. Now, this is specifically for the students in the audience.
You're running out of time.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to be quick. As a take home, use your leverage. You're a very important group at the university, and you're kind of at a disadvantage because students are only there for a couple of years, while the professors and staff usually stay much, much longer. But if you have ideas, projects, some things you care about, I can only emphasize, talk to your friends, organize, spread your ideas. It's often easier than you think. And then if you have ideas, find allies at your institutions, talk to professors and staff. They might actually, you might find people that support your ideas, and it can get you further and further into developing something. And then, yeah, find potential partners, connect with them, and then establish yourself. Establish your projects in your institution. Demand appreciation, demand that people can get ECTS, demand funding, rooms, opportunities, whatever you need to complete it, and think about long-term structures. As you only stay 3, 4, 5, maybe a bit years, maybe a bit longer, it's super important to think about how to establish and institutionalize these projects so that you can pass it on from one generation to another to really make a longer lasting impact. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm gonna quickly do the share the other.
Now we move to Uppsala. We're running a little bit late, but we're going to, I think, lose some of the discussion time here.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, so we want to start by thanking DSF and Nubo and Aarhus University and everyone involved in organizing this webinar for inviting us. This is a very exciting opportunity for us. But so we come from CIMUS at Uppsala University in Sweden, and CIMUS stands for the Center for Environmental and Development Studies. And we will talk a bit more about what the center is and what we do. But first, we wanted to just talk a little bit about us and who we are, and our background and how we ended up at CIMUS. So even though we come here representing a Swedish university and a Swedish center, we're finally not both from the same city, Barcelona, Spain. And we all both ended up studying this master's in Uppsala University called the Master's Program in Sustainable Development, for which our center, CIMUS, that's a student-led center, has some courses in. So we have a very similar background, but also we wanted to say this to show this, how international and interdisciplinary the center has become, because Paula's from political science, I'm an engineer, and we ended up doing the same thing, studying the same program.
Yeah, so now a little bit on how CIMUS was created. Basically, a couple of students were really displeased with the lack of interdisciplinary courses and forums to debate about development and environmental issues. And then they got inspired by a lecture by American biologist called Paul Ehrlich. I hope I'm not butchering that name. So they decided to create this draft as a proposal to create this kind of courses. And they got a lot of support from teachers, lecturers also, and staff. So actually it was presented to the vice chancellor of the university, and as a surprise for all of them, they actually gave them the opportunity to develop and run themselves the course. So that happened in 1992. But then in 1997, the center was institutionalized, and from then till now, these courses have been run by students, and now it's not just one course. In the beginning, it was just one course called Nature and Environment. Now there are, I believe, 15 courses or something like that in different topics, from art linked to sustainability, technology, and different aspects of environmental sciences. And yeah, that's how it was created. Yeah, this is a bit of the center, how it looks like. This is the library because it's also a space used for students, not just a place where we reunite and do the courses. And yeah, also a little bit about what is CIMUS and what is...
Close to the mic so that they can hear you online.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, so a little bit about how it is working in CIMUS. First of all, I want to stress the fact that we are employers, like we are employees. We needed to pass an interview just to see how we view the courses, why we were interested in it, what motivated us. And then we actually are in charge of coordinating the course, hiring the teachers, but also we get educated by different pedagogic people within the center about how to moderate seminars, how to give the students agency about their own education, and formulate more in-depth courses that align more with sustainability matters that are actualized. This is the Canvas. This is the platform, the student platform that we also design, and where students can find all of the resources. This is an example also of our platform as employees and what we have to turn up for the meetings.
So as workplace, we also are, as Paula said, in charge of developing the courses, and that means from beginning to end. So this is a bit of a rundown of what we do on all the parts that we have, and it's divided on like the first stage where we design and plan the content of the course. We decide what lecture topics do we want in the course, what kind of assignments, how are we going to grade the students as well, the literature or other material that they're going to engage with, and also contacting the lecturers and the researchers that will take part in the course. Because an important detail is that we coordinate the course, but we do not give the lectures ourselves. We instead reach out to other teachers at the university and other experts so they can come and lecture about specific topics. And that's all the preparation stuff, which can be quite the work in the first place, especially because a lot of our workers are also studying at the same time. But then during the course, we are facilitating workshops and seminars and help the students throughout their learning, but also just making sure that everything runs smoothly as planned and adjust anything that would be necessary. And we are also encouraged to actively listen to student demands, and if they really think that something that is not working well with the course, or they want something from the course that's not there, we have time to implement it. The course can change while it's being implemented with the student feedback, because we want the students' feedback at the forefront of the courses. And then after the courses have been ended, we ask the students for their thoughts and insights on the course, and we via the course evaluation forms. And I'd say that this is the heart of CIMUS as well, because we really take that document and the student opinions to heart when we go back to planning the course, as whatever students think that they were really missing in the course, whatever they think that worked really well and what they think that didn't really work well, that will change for the next course. So in that sense, the courses keep very fresh, and they take the students' opinions and wants to heart when they are being implemented on the next year. So that's the main way in how students can be active participants at CIMUS, even though they're not working as course coordinators. So a bit of a rundown, and maybe this is not the best layout with the Zoom for the people that are here, but the Zoom people can see it. As a CIMUS course starts with being created or recreated when the semester starts, then doesn't read there, but 2 coordinators per course are hired at 18 to 25%, depending on how big the course is. And then they are in charge of planning the course. Then a course work group is formed, and this is where we ask for feedback from teachers, researchers, and the educational coordinators at the university to make sure that we also have this expert opinion on the quality of our education. So it's not just the students' input, it's also a collaborative effort. And then the courses proceed to go as I just explained, with the planning, the delivery, and the evaluation, and then so on and so forth. And that's how the CIMUS works as an institution. But this, as a university institution, it's part of the faculties at the university, and as such, we also get funding from the university. And the way it has been divided is the base funding from being an institution at Uppsala University. Then there's also, as an educational center who imparts courses and education and sustainability, the university gives some extra funding depending on the amount of students produced that we're expected to produce, as they phrase it, and then we get a price tag per amount of student that is being produced as an extra bit of funding. And then as well, there's some fee-paying students that come from outside of the European Union, for example, that also that money comes from gets to CIMUS. There was also another university in Uppsala, the Swedish University for Agricultural Studies, that was also in partnership with CIMUS up until 2023. So last year, they unfortunately had to drop their support because of budget cuts. So that was another part of funding that was coming to CIMUS that has now been cut.
Yeah, but now a little bit about our experience. I just started working in CIMUS around last April, so around 8 months. Funnily enough, he was my coordinator when I started my master's, and then I started coordinating the same course of the introductory course of our master's with him. So I got the experience of being a student, and I come from a really traditional kind of education. So it's basically memorize theory, and then you just do an exam. And when I first come to Sweden and I was in contact with CMOS courses, I felt a bit uncomfortable just because it's really proactive for the students, incorporates a lot of different like role plays, different techniques that we weren't used to. So I felt a bit uncomfortable, I'm not going to lie. But then you take a lot from it, because also the different students, since we have a lot of international students, they are also, their experiences are precious. Like we have people from Latin America, Africa, a lot of different countries from the European Union. So there was a lot of value in that, and you learn a lot of real skills because of the way that you are trained as a student. So then I thought that it would be a really nice experience to become a coordinator. And so I applied, and I think that after seeing this duality between being a coordinator and also a student, you, even though I'm really critical, you become less critical because you see the practicalities of it and how it can sometimes be difficult to apply the things that you want to see in the classrooms. But also I feel like we are a really nice figure between the student and teachers, because we have more empathy in that sense from both of them, and it incorporates well enough in the course and creates something that it's better off for both sides of it.
Yeah, and from my part, I have been working at CMOS for quite a while now. It's I'm approaching my 4th year, and I started to work at CMOS when I was finishing my master's in sustainable development. And one of the first courses that I started to coordinate at CMOS was on that same master's in sustainable development. So I was studying the master's and also coordinating the introduction course at the same time, which was mind-blowing to me. But it having worked there for many years and having coordinated this introduction course several times in a row, I have really seen how the courses develop and how they change for the better and become less static. Because from my own input, when I first started to coordinate it as a student to how it looks today, it looks very different. And for me, it has always gone for the better, because for each iteration, it's not only my input and experience as a coordinator, but also the new student coordinator that joins with their fresh views on what the course has been for them. But not only for that person, but all of the students who give us their valuable feedback in the course evaluations get a say in how the courses should look like in the future. And I can really say that how that has been improving the course and the educational experience for the students as time progresses. So I do really think that if anything, this model should be more widespread as to combat the more traditional and static education that a lot of universities are still holding on to so hard.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed, you two. So run over the time for questions, so I think we're going to have to move on to the next in the small group work, and then maybe if you've got questions, you could be discussing these inspirational talks that you've heard and relating them to your own experience. So thank you very much indeed, all three of you. It's excellent.